my channel, Baking with Liv. I just want to say a really quick thank you to everybody who went ahead and watched my very first video. I was super excited to see all the feedback that I got, and it all seemed to be really positive. And also thank you to anybody who left a suggestion on what I can do for my future videos. Today I'm actually going to be making French macarons. I have heard that these are pretty difficult to make though, and they might be kind of challenging, but I'm always up for a good challenge, so I'm really excited to get started with those today. The first thing that you need to know about French macarons is that they are very scientific and that it's really important to get all of your ingredients pretty precise. So today I'm actually going to be using a kitchen scale as opposed to just measuring cups, because these are very particular and I heard they're a really tough cookie to master, so you want to make sure that all of your measurements are very precise. It says to start out with 200 grams of confectioner's sugar. So I'm going to go ahead and set this to grams and start adding my sugar. The next thing you'll be adding is almond flour. Now, unfortunately, almond flour I found is pretty expensive. And I don't know of a lot of cheaper alternatives, but you do need almond flour as opposed to all-purpose flour or cake flour for this recipe. And that is why when you go to the store to buy macarons, they are so expensive. A, because they use almond flour, and B, because they are kind of a challenge to make. So it says here to add 100 grams of the almond flour. The first thing that the instructions say is to go ahead and blend or put these ingredients into a food processor. So I'm just gonna go ahead and go do that. The next step is to whisk together 3 large egg whites in a grease-free and dry bowl. I separated them last night and then I let them sit out at room temperature overnight. I read a tip that this is really important to age the egg whites, and it just makes the macarons set up a little bit better. We're going to be adding 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt. For the first minute, I'm going to put this on a low speed. For the next 3 minutes, we're going to go ahead and put it on a high speed setting, and this will go until just when stiff peaks begin to form. Alright, so my egg whites are stiff now, so I'm going to go ahead and remove this attachment and just make sure it's all in the bowl. And it says in the instructions that you want to make sure you're not overbeating this. I just went ahead and did the 3 minutes. I followed whatever the instructions said, and I'm hoping that that was the right amount of time and the right speed for it. And using my rubber spatula, it's time to now fold in my sifted granulated sugar. This you'll be doing 40 grams of, or 3 tablespoons. So 1 tablespoon at a time. You'll go ahead and begin folding this into your egg whites. So in the instructions it said now would be the time to add any flavoring or color that you would like. It says to add in about 1/2 teaspoon of whatever flavoring you'd like, and then 1 to 3 drops of coloring. I don't think it's going to need a ton of coloring. I don't want it to throw off the chemistry, so I don't think it needs too much. Sometimes less is more. And I'm using almond flavoring today, so we'll add our 1/2 teaspoon. And then we will gently fold those in as well. You can also beat these in on a low speed using your hand mixer or your stand mixer. I just decided to fold it in. I thought it would be a little bit more precise and not beat the eggs too much. So now we're going to go ahead and begin folding in our dry ingredients here. This was our almond flour as well as our powdered sugar. It doesn't say to add this in parts, so I'm going to go ahead and put it all in at once, which makes me a little bit nervous, but we're just going to go for it. I'm going to go ahead and just set these to the side at room temperature, uncovered, for 10 to 30 minutes. Macarons are known for being a pretty sticky cookie and getting stuck to the baking sheet. So what I'm going to do to try and combat that today is use a sheet with parchment paper on it. It is recommended to use a silicone mat, however, I don't have one of those myself, and I know that it's not really a common household item. So a lot of people do have parchment paper, and I read that you can definitely use that as well. I went ahead and traced some circles using a stencil and pencil onto the back side of the parchment paper. This is just so the macarons will have a really uniform look. I went ahead and spaced them out evenly as well. You want to make sure that your macarons will not run together. And so then I'm just going to lay the pencil side down onto the baking sheet. So when I go to pipe them out, they will all be very uniform and circular. So it's been about 15 minutes now, and it's time to start filling my piping bag, or just a regular Ziploc bag, with my mixture. It's definitely started to stiffen up a little bit, which I think is what it's supposed to do. So hopefully that will be good for piping it out. I just placed my piping bag into a cup so it'll make it easier to put the mixture inside. And if you need to do it in a couple batches, I think I'm going to go ahead and do that. So in the directions, it says to hold your piping bag directly up and down, and to be aware that the mixture might start to spread. So maybe don't fill your circle completely right away and wait to see if it spreads out just a little bit to make sure. Okay, so now that I've piped out the macarons, it says the next step is to kind of bang them against the counter just a little bit. This will cause them to spread and flatten out evenly. You're also knocking out any of the air that may be contained within the batter. All right, and the next step takes quite a bit of patience. We're gonna set these aside and let them set up for about 45 minutes to an hour. I know that's a long time, but it is absolutely crucial to let them sit. Otherwise, they will not form the feet that you need and the nice shell on top that you get with macaron. So while my macarons were sitting, I decided that I was going to go ahead and preheat my oven to 325 degrees Fahrenheit and make a buttercream filling for my macarons. I will be making a video on how to make my favorite buttercream coming up here pretty soon, so keep an eye out for that because this buttercream is the best I've ever had. But if you're somebody who doesn't want to make your own, or you don't really have the resources to do so, your local grocery store, you could go ahead and pick up frosting there. And also, just a tip, a lot of grocery store bakeries will sell their own homemade frosting to you if you just request it. They usually sell it by weight, so it is a little bit expensive, but theirs is usually better than just your standard Pillsbury or Betty Crocker that they sell on the shelves in the store. Before I put these in the oven, I just want you guys to see what they look like. I've heard that the tops should be really hard, and they definitely seem to be hardening up, so that's a good sign. I'm hoping that means that I did it correctly. And they've kept their shape really well, weren't too runny or anything. So 8 to 10 minutes in the oven, and hopefully they'll puff up and get those nice little feet that we're expecting. So at about the 5-minute mark, you want to go ahead and turn your baking sheet around. This is just so you get even baking all across the board on all the macarons. Alright, so I just pulled my macaron out of the oven, and they're looking a little bit crazy. Some better than others, but they're interesting. So with macaron, what you do want is what's called feet, which are these little rounds on the bottom. However, I've never seen them quite so big before. And so I think that maybe something went a little bit wrong, but I followed all the directions, so maybe they'll taste delicious. We are going to let them cool absolutely completely before we start putting any sort of filling in them. So I will set them to the side, and the taste will be the true test of whether or not we did these correctly. I'm hoping that they turned out all right, but like I said, macaron are a really difficult cookie to master, and for a first attempt, I am not disappointed so far in these. Alright, so I let my macarons sit for about an hour now, and they seem to be lifting off the tray perfectly. Like I said, the feet are a little bit large, but I am just going to go ahead and start filling them anyway and hope for the best. So this is what one half of it will look like, and then you'll just go ahead and take them and sandwich them together like that. You don't want the frosting to come out the sides too much, so don't press down too hard. First and give the cookie by itself a try. They're not quite as hard to shell on top as I would have liked, so I'm a little bit worried that they might be wrong, but I'm going to go ahead and try them anyway. These have really nice flavor. and I like the bite and the chew to them. I do think that they needed a little bit more of a shell on top, so I'm not really sure what the chemical reason behind that is. I definitely followed directions on making sure they sat long enough and that they rested. So my thought is that maybe I could have overbeat the eggs. I left them in my stand mixer for as long as the recipe said to, but depending on what speed I was going at versus what speed the person who invented the recipe had their mixer at, I may have just overmixed them and the stiff peaks were beat just a little bit too much, but they are definitely delicious, so I'm excited to try these ones that have the buttercream. So let's try them with the filling. So my macarons are by no means perfect. Like I said, they definitely needed a harder shell on top, but they're definitely delicious, so I'm not disappointed at all in these. So I realized that my rating on the last video that I made was not super thorough and might have been a little bit confusing for those trying to figure out why I rated certain things the way that I did. So I'm actually going to be breaking up this rating into subcategories so you guys can understand a little bit better why I rated something the way that I did. So for starters, for these macarons, I would say that taste is absolutely 10 out of 10. These were phenomenal. I absolutely love them. Now for the ease of making these, I would have to give these a 4 or 5 out of 10. These were pretty difficult to make. They were labor intensive. They took a very long time, a lot of patience, and you needed to have some prior baking knowledge. If you're somebody who has never baked before and you decide to make these honestly might make you stop baking for good. I would say that you really need to have a good understanding of baking chemistry and things like what stiff peaks look like, etc., and when to stop your KitchenAid, which I had a hard time doing on time. So overall though, I would give these macarons an 8 out of 10. I think they're super cute and that they would be really impressive, but they were very hard to make and they would take you a really long time. Overall though, 8 out of 10. Don't let it discourage you from trying them out. It might be a little bit hard the first few times, but practice makes perfect, and I definitely recommend making them because they're so delicious. Thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. Please leave a comment below letting me know any suggestions you have for future videos or what I can do to improve my videos a little bit more. I really appreciate anybody who subscribes, so if you haven't already, please go down below and hit the subscribe button. This recipe will be linked in the description bar, and thank you guys for watching. I hope to see you in my next video.